The Gulfstream G650's engines hummed at 38,000 feet when the first missile lock alarm screamed through the cabin. Passengers in first class looked up from their champagne glasses, confused by the electronic shrieking that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The woman in row 22 didn't flinch. She kept reading Forbes, her manicured finger tracing stock prices while chaos erupted around her. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." The pilot's voice cracked over the intercom. "We're experiencing some technical difficulties and will be making an emergency landing." What he didn't say was that two F-22 Raptors had just flanked them, their pilots broadcasting on emergency frequencies that the aircraft was now under military escort. What he couldn't know was that the brunette in the Hermes suit had already calculated their descent rate, recognized the engine harmonics of the interceptors, and identified their probable weapons loadout based on the wing configurations she glimpsed through the porthole. Her name was Artemis Kine according to the passenger manifest. Net worth, $2.7 billion. CEO of Meridian Defense Solutions, a private military contractor that specialized in logistics and consulting. The kind of consulting that involved armed helicopters and plausible deniability. The Gulfstream touched down at Andrews Air Force Base with the gentlest of bumps, professional enough that most passengers assumed they'd simply diverted to the wrong airport. They assumed wrong. The moment the aircraft stopped moving, the cabin lights cut out. Emergency lighting bathed everything in hellish red. "Nobody move." The voice came from the forward cabin, calm and authoritative. Navy SEALs in full tactical gear materialized from the cockpit area, their weapons trained on the passenger compartment. Night vision goggles gleamed like insect eyes in the crimson glow. The lead operator moved down the aisle with predatory precision, checking faces against photographs on a tablet. Oil executives, tech moguls, hedge fund princes, all trembling in their $1,000 seats, until he reached row 22. Artemis Kine looked up from her magazine. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't plead or bargain or demand her lawyer. She simply reached into her jacket pocket, slowly, deliberately, and produced a worn leather wallet. Inside was an identification card that made the SEAL team leader freeze mid-step. His rifle lowered an inch, then another. Behind his tactical goggles, recognition dawned like a sunrise breaking through storm clouds. The other SEALs noticed their leader's hesitation, and their own weapons wavered. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered through the radio static. "That's not Artemis Kine." The woman smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, she spoke her real call sign aloud. "Hello, boys, did you miss me?" The silence that followed was the kind that precedes either a firefight or a miracle. Sometimes, in the military, those two things are the same. Lieutenant Colonel Zara Phoenix Voss had been dead for 3 years, killed in action over the Persian Gulf according to official records. The woman sitting in row 22 was supposed to be a ghost, a classified casualty buried in black ink and bureaucratic amnesia. Yet here she was, breathing and smiling and very much alive. The SEAL team leader, Senior Chief Marcus Webb, had served 2 tours with Phoenix back when she was still flying Hornets off the USS Theodore Roosevelt. He'd watched her thread the needle between enemy SAM sites like she was born for it, had seen her bring home pilots who should have died screaming in burning cockpits. The woman in front of him had the same storm gray eyes, the same scar along her left temple from a training accident in flight school. "Stand down, Phoenix," Webb said quietly, though his weapon remained ready. "You're coming with us either way." Zara Voss, she'd almost forgotten that name belonged to her, set down the magazine and clasped her hands in her lap. 3 years of carefully constructed identity unraveled in an instant. The board meetings, the stock options, the penthouse overlooking Manhattan Harbor, all of it had been an elaborate masquerade. Artemis Kine was a fiction designed to hide the most classified pilot in naval aviation history. "I figured this day would come," she said, "though I expected it sooner." Webb gestured toward the cabin door where more operators waited. The Pentagon has questions. Lots of them. I bet they do. Zara stood slowly, smoothing down her skirt. The other passengers watched in confused silence as the billionaire CEO transformed before their eyes into something else entirely. Her posture shifted, shoulders squaring into a bearing that screamed military precision. The corporate shark persona dissolved, revealing the apex predator beneath. As they led her down the aircraft stairs, Zara caught sight of the F-22s still circling overhead. Sleek death machines painting contrails against the late afternoon sky. She'd flown their predecessors, knew every rivet and wire in their airframes. The sight filled her with something between nostalgia and regret. 3 black SUVs waited on the tarmac, their windows tinted dark enough to hide state secrets. Webb opened the door of the middle vehicle and waited. Before stepping inside, Zara turned to look at him one last time as Lieutenant Colonel Voss instead of Artemis Kine. "How did you find me, Marcus?" Webb's expression was unreadable behind his tactical gear. "You should know better than anyone, Phoenix. Nobody stays dead forever." The door slammed shut with the finality of a coffin lid, and the convoy disappeared into the Virginia countryside, carrying America's most dangerous ghost toward a reckoning 3 years in the making. The Pentagon's basement levels housed secrets that would topple governments and rewrite history books. Sub-basement 7, accessible only by special clearance and armed escort, contained the office of Admiral Catherine Torres, Director of Naval Special Projects. The nameplate on her desk was a lie. Her real title was classified at levels that most senators would never see. Zara sat in an uncomfortable metal chair, still wearing her Hermes suit but stripped of jewelry, phones, and anything else that might contain recording devices. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps. She'd been here before, years ago, when Phoenix was more than just a call sign, when it was a project designation that made grown men sweat through their uniforms. Admiral Torres entered without fanfare, carrying a manila folder thick enough to stop small-caliber bullets. She was older than Zara remembered, silver-haired and sharp-eyed as a hunting hawk. The kind of officer who'd clawed her way to flag rank in a navy that still struggled with women in combat roles. 3 years, Torres said, settling into her chair. 3 goddamn years we thought you were dead. You were supposed to think that. Zara's voice carried no apology. That was the whole point. Torres opened the folder and began reading. Lieutenant Colonel Zara Voss, Top Gun graduate class of 2015. 97 combat missions, 0 losses, 3 air-to-air kills confirmed. Test pilot certification, experimental aircraft program. She looked up. And then you died. The official story was simple. Equipment malfunction during a classified mission over the Persian Gulf. Hydraulic failure followed by unrecoverable flat spin. Aircraft and pilot lost at sea, bodies never recovered. Standard operating procedure for black operations that went sideways. Clean, tragic, and utterly false. The mission went exactly as planned, Zara said. I just decided not to come home. Torres leaned back in her chair, studying the woman across from her like a chess master contemplating an unexpected move. Project Phoenix was terminated after your alleged death. Funding diverted, personnel reassigned, aircraft scrapped. Her voice carried the weight of institutional disappointment. $20 billion down the drain because our best pilot decided to play dead. Project Phoenix had been the Pentagon's answer to emerging threats in contested airspace. Experimental aircraft that blended cutting-edge technology with pilot augmentation systems, creating something that wasn't quite human and wasn't quite machine. Zara had been the perfect candidate. Brilliant, fearless, and psychologically stable enough to handle the neural interface technology that had driven other test pilots to madness. I gave you everything, Zara said quietly. My body, my mind, my soul. I let you wire circuits into my brain and pump experimental chemicals into my bloodstream. I became your perfect weapon. And then you disappeared. The accusation hung between them like smoke from a funeral pyre. Torres had built her career on Project Phoenix, had staked her reputation on creating the future of air combat. Zara's defection hadn't just been a personal betrayal, it had been a strategic catastrophe that rippled through the highest levels of national security. The interrogation room's walls seemed to press closer as Admiral Torres spread classified photographs across the metal table. Images of aircraft that officially didn't exist, mission reports redacted into Swiss cheese, medical files that read like science fiction. The documentation of Project Phoenix laid bare in fluorescent light. The neural interface technology, Torres began, tapping a photograph of a sleek helmet bristling with fiber optic cables, took 7 years to develop, cost $2.3 billion. We tested it on 37 pilots before we found one whose brain could handle the bandwidth. Zara stared at her own medical scans, the ghostly outlines of implants threaded through her cerebral cortex like technological spider webs. The surgery had taken 14 hours, performed by neurosurgeons with clearance levels higher than most cabinet members. When she'd awakened, the world had looked different. Sharper, faster, more dangerous. The F-35 variant we built for you, Torres continued, could process tactical data at speeds that would overwhelm normal human cognition. We called it the Nephilim, angel of death with a human conscience. The aircraft in the photograph was beautiful in the way that apex predators were beautiful, sleek, purposeful, and utterly lethal. Stealth characteristics that made it invisible to radar, engines that could push it to Mach 3.2, weapons systems that could engage 64 targets simultaneously. All of it controlled by a pilot whose enhanced nervous system could process information at superhuman speeds. I remember the first time I flew it, Zara said softly. It wasn't like piloting an aircraft, it was like becoming one. The neural interface had been more than just enhanced reaction time and improved spatial awareness. At full integration, the boundary between pilot and machine had dissolved entirely. Zara's consciousness had merged with the aircraft's systems, her thoughts becoming flight commands, her emotions translating into tactical decisions. She'd been a ghost in the machine, quite literally. The Persian Gulf mission, Torres said, producing another folder. Tehran was developing electromagnetic pulse weapons that could disable our carrier groups. We needed someone who could penetrate their air defense network and gather intelligence without being detected. The mission brief had been straightforward. Fly deep into Iranian airspace, photograph weapons facilities, return undetected. Simple for a pilot of Zara's caliber, routine for aircraft like the Nephilim. What the mission planners hadn't anticipated was what Zara would discover in those underground facilities. You saw something, Torres said. It wasn't a question. Zara nodded slowly. They weren't just building EMP weapons. They were building neural interface technology, reverse-engineered from stolen Phoenix program data. The implications had hit Zara like a physical blow. Everything she'd become, every enhancement that made her superhuman, was being replicated by hostile powers. The technology that had saved American lives was being perverted into tools of oppression and terror, and her own government had been feeding it to them through intelligence leaks they couldn't plug. So you decided to disappear, Torres said. I decided to think. The convoy wound through Virginia countryside as darkness fell like a curtain across the world. Zara sat in the back seat of the SUV, watching familiar landscapes scroll past bulletproof windows. 3 years of civilian life had softened her edges but hadn't dulled her instincts. She could feel the weight of Admiral Torres' gaze from the seat across from her, calculating and predatory. Artemis Kine was quite a creation, Torres said eventually. Defense contractor, billionaire philanthropist, collector of military memorabilia, you even donated to veteran charities. Zara smiled without humor. The irony wasn't lost on me. Building the Artemis Kine identity had required resources that went beyond simple document forgery. She'd needed legitimate business ventures, verified financial history, social connections that could withstand scrutiny from intelligence agencies. The Swiss bank accounts had been the easy part. Pilots with her clearance level knew how to move money through channels that didn't officially exist. Meridian Defense Solutions. Tours continued, reading from another file. Private military contractors specializing in pilot training and air support services. Very convenient for someone who wanted to stay close to the aviation world without appearing on any government payrolls. The company had been Zara's window into the changing landscape of military aviation. Through Meridian's contracts, she'd watched the Phoenix program's technology slowly bleed into mainstream aircraft development. Neural interface systems appeared in experimental drone programs. Enhanced reaction protocols found their way into pilot training curricula. Her stolen innovations were reshaping the future of air combat. "You've been busy," Torres observed. "Meridian has contracts in 17 countries, training programs, weapons testing, aircraft modification." Her voice carried a dangerous edge. "Some of those modifications look suspiciously familiar." Zara had been careful never to reproduce Phoenix technology exactly, but she'd pushed the boundaries wherever possible. Enhanced helmet systems that provided tactical data overlays, G-suit modifications that improved pilot endurance, flight computer algorithms that anticipated enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. All of it deniable, all of it profitable, and all of it one step removed from treason. The SUV turned onto a military road marked by signs warning unauthorized personnel to keep out. Through the windshield, Zara could see lights in the distance, an airfield, based on the runway beacon patterns she'd memorized years ago. Her pulse quickened despite her efforts to remain calm. "Where are we going?" she asked. Torres closed the file and met her eyes. "Nellie's Air Force Base. Area 51 is too public these days, but the Nevada desert still knows how to keep secrets." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "We need to discuss your future, Phoenix, and whether you still have one." The words carried the weight of an execution order, delivered with the casual brutality that flag officers reserved for subordinates who'd crossed lines that shouldn't exist. Zara had known this moment would come eventually. The only question had been whether she'd face it as Artemis Kine or as Phoenix. Now she knew the answer. Nellie's Air Force Base sprawled across the Nevada desert like a military city, its runways stretching toward mountains that looked like broken teeth against the star-filled sky. The classified sections lay beyond the tourist areas where aviation enthusiasts gathered to watch experimental aircraft, deeper in the desert where even satellites were politely asked not to look. Zara's SUV passed through 3 security checkpoints, each more heavily armed than the last. At the final gate, guards with rifles and classified weapons scanners examined every molecule of the convoy before waving them through. The message was clear: whatever lay ahead was worth killing to protect. The aircraft hangar they approached was larger than most shopping malls, its doors sealed with locks that required biometric confirmation from multiple sources. When those doors finally slid open, Zara's breath caught in her throat despite 3 years of preparation for this moment. The Nephilim sat in the hangar's center like a sleeping dragon, its stealth surfaces drinking light and reflecting nothing back. 3 years had passed since Zara last laid eyes on her aircraft, and the reunion felt like encountering a lover she'd betrayed. The fighters' lines were perfect, mathematical poetry written in titanium and carbon fiber. "We kept her maintained," Torres said, following Zara's gaze, "just in case." Engineers moved around the aircraft like priests tending an altar, checking systems, and running diagnostics on equipment that existed in no official inventory. The neural interface helmet sat in its specialized cradle, cables coiled like sleeping snakes. 3 years hadn't diminished its alien appearance. If anything, improvements had made it more unsettling. The technology has evolved, Torres continued. Processing speeds increased by 30%. Reaction time improved by zero point 0.7 seconds. We've eliminated most of the psychological side effects. The psychological side effects had been the program's dirty secret. Pilots who interfaced with advanced aircraft systems too frequently sometimes lost the ability to distinguish between human and machine consciousness. Some had gone catatonic, locked in neural feedback loops that required medical intervention to break. Others had simply walked away from their human lives, claiming they belonged more to the sky than to the earth. Zara approached the Nephilim slowly, her hand extended toward the aircraft's nose cone. The surface was warm to the touch, heated by internal systems that never fully shut down. For a moment, she could swear she felt the machine's heartbeat pulsing through the metal. "Why bring me here?" she asked without turning around. "Because the world has changed since you died," Torres replied, "and we need Phoenix back." A technician approached carrying a tablet loaded with classified intelligence reports. The headlines painted a picture of escalating conflicts in regions where conventional forces couldn't operate effectively. Chinese hypersonic missiles that could outrun any existing interceptor. Russian electronic warfare systems that turned American aircraft into flying coffins. Iranian neural interface technology that was producing pilots with superhuman capabilities. "They're using our own innovations against us," Torres said, "and they're getting better at it every day." The implications crystallized in Zara's enhanced mind with the clarity that neural augmentation provided. Project Phoenix hadn't died with her supposed death. It had metastasized, spreading through black market channels and intelligence leaks until every major power possessed fragments of the technology. The future she'd feared was already arriving. The briefing room adjacent to the hangar contained enough classified information to start or prevent a war, depending on who controlled it. Wall-mounted screens displayed real-time intelligence from conflict zones around the globe, painting a picture of a world sliding toward chaos, one technological breakthrough at a time. "Syria," Admiral Torres began, gesturing toward a tactical display. 2 weeks ago, a Syrian pilot in a modified MiG-29 shot down an Israeli F-35. The engagement lasted 4.3 seconds. No missiles fired. The Syrian aircraft rammed the F-35 at Mach 2.1 and somehow survived the collision. The engagement footage was grainy but unmistakable. The Syrian aircraft moved with inhuman precision, its pilot executing maneuvers that should have resulted in fatal G-forces. When the collision occurred, the MiG's pilot maintained control while the F-35 disintegrated around its ejection seat. "Neural interface technology," Zara said quietly. "Enhanced G-tolerance, improved reaction time, probably some form of pain suppression." Torres nodded grimly. "Based on stolen Phoenix program data, our intelligence suggests they've been testing it for 18 months. The next screen showed satellite imagery from an Iranian military facility. Underground construction, electromagnetic shielding, aircraft hangars built to house something larger than conventional fighters. The facility's heat signature suggested massive electrical consumption, the kind needed to power neural interface systems. "The Iranians have gone further," Torres continued. "They're not just enhancing pilots, they're creating them from scratch. Volunteers undergo extensive surgery to implant interface technology directly into their nervous systems. The survival rate is approximately 30%. Zara studied the intelligence reports, her enhanced mind processing tactical implications at superhuman speed. The Phoenix program had been designed as a force multiplier, giving American pilots an edge in contested airspace. But in the hands of authoritarian regimes, the same technology became a tool of oppression and expansion. "China is the real threat," Torres said, switching to another display. "They've managed to reproduce 60% of the Phoenix program's capabilities. Their test pilots are achieving integration levels we thought were impossible." The Chinese facility looked like a cross between a medical center and an aircraft factory. Pilots emerged from surgery with visible neural interface ports, their skulls modified to accommodate technology that blurred the line between human and machine. Success rates were higher than Iran's, but still represented mass sacrifice in pursuit of military advantage. How many? Zora asked. At least 200 enhanced pilots in active service, possibly double that in training. Torres paused, letting the numbers sink in. They're calling them the Celestial Dragons. The name carried cultural weight that wasn't lost on Zara. Dragons in Chinese mythology were symbols of imperial power and divine authority. Celestial dragons were the highest rank, responsible for protecting the heavens themselves. The message was clear. China viewed its enhanced pilots as guardians of a new world order. And our response? Torres smiled without warmth. Project Phoenix is being reactivated. Enhanced budget, expanded scope, fewer ethical constraints. She gestured toward the Nephilim visible through the briefing room's reinforced windows. We need our angel of death back. The weight of destiny settled on Zara's shoulders like a flight harness, familiar and inescapable. She tried to walk away from this life, had built an entire identity around being anything other than Phoenix. But the world wouldn't let her stay dead. The neural interface helmet sat in its specialized cradle, cables and monitoring equipment arrayed around it like the instruments of some technological ritual. Zara had worn the device hundreds of times during her active service, but 3 years of separation made it feel alien and threatening. Dr. Sarah Chen, the program's chief neurologist, monitored Zara's vital signs as technicians prepared the interface systems. Her expression was professionally neutral, but Zara could see concern in her eyes. Neural interface technology had advanced during Phoenix's absence, but the risks remained significant. The integration process will take approximately 40 minutes, Dr. Chen explained. We've improved the neural mapping algorithms, reduced connection latency by 18%. You should experience less disorientation than during your original training. Zara nodded, though her stomach churned with something between anticipation and dread. The Phoenix program had changed her at the cellular level, rewriting her nervous system to accommodate technological enhancement. 3 years of civilian life hadn't erased those modifications, but they'd grown dormant, neural pathways closing like unused roads. Admiral Torres wants a full capability assessment, Dr. Chen continued. Flight performance, tactical integration, psychological stability, the works. The psychological evaluation was the part that worried Zara most. Extended use of neural interface technology had unpredictable effects on human consciousness. Some pilots reported enhanced creativity and problem-solving abilities. Others experienced dissociation disorders that made them feel like strangers in their own bodies. A few had simply walked away from their human identities entirely. Technicians lowered the helmet onto Zara's head with the reverence of priests handling sacred relics. The device weighed 47 pounds, but felt lighter once the neural connections activated, its mass distributed through her enhanced nervous system. Fiber optic cables snaked from the helmet to processing units that hummed with barely contained power. Initiating primary interface, Dr. Chen announced. The world exploded into data streams and tactical overlays. Zara's enhanced vision processed information at speeds that would overwhelm normal human cognition. Aircraft telemetry, weather patterns, electromagnetic spectrums, all of it flowed through her consciousness like digital blood through technological veins. Neural integration at 60%, someone reported. Biometrics are stable. Zara felt the familiar dissolution of boundaries between self and system. Her thoughts became electrical impulses racing through computer networks. Her emotions translated into tactical parameters. The hangar around her transformed into a three-dimensional tactical environment, complete with threat assessments and engagement solutions. "Phoenix, do you copy?" Admiral Tor's voice came through the neural link, bypassing her ears entirely. "I copy," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the chaos in her enhanced mind. "Integration is complete." For the first time in 3 years, Lieutenant Colonel Zara Phoenix Voss was truly home. The Nephilim's engines spooled up with a sound like controlled thunder, their electromagnetic signatures carefully shielded from external detection. Zara sat in the cockpit, her consciousness merged with the aircraft's systems through neural pathways that felt as natural as breathing. 3 years of separation hadn't diminished the connection. If anything, the interface felt more seamless than ever. "Nellie's control, Phoenix requesting departure clearance," she transmitted, using her old call sign for the first time since her supposed death. "Phoenix, you are cleared for departure. Proceed to test range 77. Good hunting." The aircraft rolled forward under its own power, guided by Zara's thoughts as much as her hands. Through the neural interface, she could feel every system in the fighter: engine temperature, fuel flow, weapons status, electromagnetic emissions. The Nephilim wasn't just a machine she piloted, it was an extension of her enhanced nervous system. Takeoff was silk smooth, the fighter rising into Nevada airspace like a digital angel ascending toward heaven. The sun was setting behind mountains that looked like broken glass against the desert horizon. At 30,000 feet, Zara pushed the throttles forward and felt the aircraft respond with predatory grace. "Phoenix, initiating combat assessment protocol," Admiral Tor's voice came through the neural link. 12 targets inbound from the north. Mix of fighters and electronic warfare aircraft. Engage at will. The exercise was designed to test every aspect of the Phoenix program's capabilities. Zara's enhanced consciousness processed the tactical situation in milliseconds, identifying threats and calculating engagement solutions with superhuman speed. The neural interface translated her thoughts into flight commands, her emotions into tactical parameters. The first target was a modified F-16, equipped with jamming systems that would have blinded conventional aircraft. Through her enhanced sensors, Zara could see through the electronic camouflage as easily as looking through clear water. Her weapons systems locked onto the fighter before its pilot even knew she was there. "Fox 3, she called, launching a missile that existed only in the simulation. The engagement was over in seconds. Zara's enhanced reflexes and the Nephilim's superior maneuverability created a killing combination that overwhelmed enemy aircraft with ruthless efficiency. By the time the exercise ended, 12 simulated enemies had been destroyed without Phoenix taking a single hit. "Impressive," Tors commented as Zara began her approach to Nellie's. "Your skills haven't diminished." But something had changed during the flight, something that went deeper than tactical proficiency. The neural interface had awakened memories that Zara had tried to bury during her civilian years. The feeling of absolute power that came with superhuman enhancement. The godlike perspective that emerged when human consciousness merged with advanced technology. She was remembering why she'd run away in the first place. Landing at Nellie's felt like returning to a dream that might turn into a nightmare without warning. The Nephilim touched down with barely a whisper, its stealth systems already masking its presence from sensors that weren't designed to detect ghosts. Zara sat in the cockpit for long moments after shutdown, feeling the neural interface gradually disengage from her consciousness. The transition back to purely human awareness was always disorienting. Colors seemed duller, sounds became muffled, time moved with sluggish imprecision. The enhanced capabilities that made her superhuman in flight left her feeling disabled and clumsy on the ground. It was a cruel irony that the technology that made her the perfect pilot also made her increasingly unsuited for human existence. Admiral Tors waited in the hangar as Zara climbed down from the cockpit, her expression unreadable. The flight test had been a success by any measurable standard. Phoenix's skills were intact. The neural interface functioned perfectly. the Nephilim performed flawlessly. But success in military terms didn't always translate to success in human terms. "The Joint Chiefs are pleased with your performance," Torres said. "They're authorizing immediate reactivation of the Phoenix program. Enhanced budget, expanded scope, classified at levels that require presidential approval." Zara removed her flight helmet, feeling neural interface cables disconnect from ports that had been surgically implanted in her skull years ago. The sudden return to baseline human consciousness was like trying to see after staring into the sun. Everything felt limited and constrained. "I want to read the mission parameters," she said. Torres handed her a tablet loaded with classified documents. The scope of the new Phoenix program was breathtaking in its ambition and terrifying in its implications. Multiple enhanced pilots, advanced aircraft that pushed the boundaries of known technology, operations in contested airspace where conventional forces couldn't survive. "We're not just creating enhanced pilots," Torres explained. "We're building a new kind of warfare, one where the line between human and machine becomes irrelevant." The mission profiles read like science fiction. Deep penetration strikes against hardened targets, air superiority missions in electromagnetically contested environments, reconnaissance flights through airspace defended by neural-enhanced enemy pilots. Each operation required capabilities that existed at the bleeding edge of human enhancement technology. "And if I refuse?" Zara asked. Tor's smile was as sharp as a knife blade. "Artemis Kine died in a terrorist attack on a private aircraft. Very tragic. Her body was never recovered." The threat was delivered with bureaucratic politeness, but its meaning was unmistakable. Zara's civilian identity could disappear as easily as it had been created, leaving Phoenix as her only option for continued existence. The military had invested too much in her enhancement to allow her to walk away a second time. "I need time to consider," Zara said. "You have until tomorrow morning. Then Phoenix takes flight, one way or another." The secure quarters at Nellie's were comfortable enough, but they felt like a cage to someone who'd spent 3 years as one of the world's wealthiest women. Zara sat on the narrow bed, staring at classified documents that outlined her possible futures. None of them included the option of returning to civilian life. The neural interface ports in her skull throbbed with phantom sensations, nerve pathways that had been surgically modified to accommodate technological enhancement. During her time as Artemis Kine, she'd managed to forget about the hardware embedded in her brain. Now it felt like a constant reminder of what she'd become. A knock at the door interrupted her brooding. Senior Chief Webb entered without waiting for permission, his expression as professionally neutral as always. But Zara could read the concern in his body language, the subtle tension that suggested internal conflict. "I wanted to talk before you make your decision," he said, settling into the room's single chair. Webb had served with Zara during her original tour with the Phoenix program, had seen her evolution from exceptional pilot to something that transcended purely human capabilities. He'd also witnessed the psychological toll that neural enhancement had taken on pilots who pushed the technology too far. "You remember Lieutenant Morrison," Webb said. "It wasn't a question." Morrison had been Phoenix 2, the program's second enhanced pilot. Brilliant, fearless, and psychologically stable according to all official assessments. He'd undergone neural enhancement surgery 6 months after Zara, achieving integration levels that impressed even the program's designers. For 8 months, Morrison had been the poster child for human-machine fusion technology. Then he disappeared. Not killed in action or lost to equipment failure, but simply walked away from his identity one Tuesday morning. Security cameras showed him leaving his quarters at 600 hours, still wearing his flight suit. By 6:30, he'd vanished from base without triggering any alarms or security protocols. The search lasted 3 months and covered 4 states before being quietly discontinued. They found him 18 months later, Webb continued. Living in a commune in Montana, calling himself by a number instead of a name, said he didn't remember being human. The implication hung between them like smoke from a funeral pyre. Neural enhancement technology came with prices that weren't always apparent during initial implementation. Some costs became evident only after years of integration, when the boundary between human and machine consciousness had eroded beyond recognition. Phoenix isn't just a call sign, Webb said quietly. It's a warning about what happens when you burn everything human away. Zara nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. The mythical phoenix died in flames before being reborn from its own ashes, but the creature that emerged wasn't the same as the one that had burned. It was something new, something that might not remember what it had been before the fire. The question was whether Lieutenant Colonel Zara Voss was willing to die so that Phoenix could be reborn. Dawn broke over the Nevada desert like spilled blood across broken glass, painting the mountains in shades of amber and crimson. Zara stood at her quarters window, watching the sunrise and thinking about endings. In 6 hours, she would either climb back into the Nephilim's cockpit or disappear into bureaucratic amnesia. There was no third option. Her reflection in the window showed a woman caught between identities, neither fully civilian nor completely military. The neural interface ports were visible as small scars along her hairline, marking her as property of programs that officially didn't exist. 3 years of playing Artemis Kine hadn't erased the modifications that made her Phoenix. A breakfast tray had been delivered while she slept, along with a fresh flight suit and orders to report to Admiral Torres at 800 hours. The uniform felt strange after years of designer clothing, its fabric rougher against skin that had grown accustomed to silk and cashmere. But it also felt familiar, like putting on armor that had been forged specifically for her body. The walk to Tor's office took her through corridors lined with photographs of aircraft that didn't officially exist. Test programs, prototype weapons, experimental systems that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The Phoenix program had been just one project among dozens, but it had always been the most ambitious. Torres waited in her office with 2 other flag officers whose faces Zara recognized from classified briefings. General Patricia Hawks, Director of Air Force Special Projects. Admiral Michael Chen, Head of Naval Research and Development. Between them, they controlled budgets that exceeded the GDP of small nations and technologies that could reshape the balance of global power. "Have you reached a decision?" Torres asked without preamble. Zara took a breath that tasted like desert air and jet fuel. "I'll fly, but I have conditions." The 3 flag officers exchanged glances loaded with implications Zara couldn't quite decipher. They'd expected this moment, had probably war-gamed various scenarios during her night of consideration. But she'd also had time to think, and enhanced neural processing had given her insights they might not have anticipated. "No other pilots," she said firmly. "The Phoenix program dies with me. When this mission is complete, you retire the technology and destroy the research." General Hawks leaned forward. "That's not feasible. The threats we face require." "The threats we face exist because this technology has proliferated beyond our control," Zara interrupted. "Adding more enhanced pilots won't solve the problem. It will accelerate it." Admiral Chen consulted a tablet. "Intelligence suggests Chinese and Iranian programs are advancing rapidly. Without Phoenix-level capabilities, we'll